Royal Rebounds TV with Calvin and Barry. Just two crazy fans of the Sacramento Kings, and they sharing their opinion. So be sure that you subscribe. It's for the fans, by the fans. Whether you chilling on the couch or wildin' in the stands. For laid back conversations about the Kings, subscribe here. Staying down until we come up thinking this gon' be our year. We're here drinking beer, talking about the Kings. Be sure you subscribe so you can hear that bell ring. Yeah.
What up, Kings fans? Welcome back to Royal Rebounds, a YouTube channel for fans by fans.
This is the Royal Rebounds Podcast with Calvin and Barry. Kings get a big win, 2 in a row. They got momentum.
They do. We'll talk about it right after this break. We're here. We're drinking beers, and we're talking about your Sacramento Kings. If you're a Kings fan, make sure you hit that like button down below. And if you enjoy fresh Kings content, consider subscribing to the channel. Calvin and I put out new content almost daily, and we talk about your Sacramento Kings. Shout out Mike, shout out Jim, shout out Makami. I see you guys here in the chat. Thanks for joining us. As Calvin mentioned, Kings win tonight, 126-114 over the Houston Rockets. King Stradamus' prediction was pretty close for this game, so Cal. I don't know if you guys watched the Royal Report this morning. If you did not, make sure you check that out. But, Cal, what's your first thoughts on the game tonight?
Well, my first thought is to echo what Mike just said in the chat here. Marvin Bagley balled out tonight. After the first quarter of this game, I was going to start the show with, hey, Monty, number 35 in white is pretty good. But number 35 in black might have outplayed him tonight.
Yeah.
It was close. But Fox and Bagley were the difference in this game for the Kings.
100%. Yeah, it was a very disappointing first quarter of basketball for your Sacramento Kings. They give up 40 points. The Houston Rockets shoot 61%. And I was feeling a little bit down. I was a little bit emotional. And I was like, you know what? If the Kings lose this game, it's time to blow it up. This is the worst team in the Western Conference. If the Kings lose to them, it's time to blow it up. And, you know, I was looking at them and I'm like, you know, this team has a really bad record, but there's a lot of good young players on this team. They have some good other players in Eric Gordon, Christian Wood, stuff like that. But all the teams in the NBA have good players on them. All of them have young talent. All of them have veterans. So there's always going to be teams on the bottom with, quote unquote, some good young players on the team. And Sacramento Kings might be one of those teams.
Yeah, I mean, the Rockets are a lot like the Kings in that sense that they have a lot of good individual players, but the team makeup isn't quite what it needs to be in order for them to be a consistent winning team in the league. And you look at these two teams, they're only separated by 5 wins. So there are a lot of parallels you can take between both of these teams, but you're right. It's a good thing that the Kings were able to pull this game out, because if they didn't, this show probably would have been a little different.
Yeah, definitely would have been a lot more negative. But as Cal mentioned, huge game for Marvin Bagley tonight. Another big game for Darren Fox. I was pretty surprised. Christian Wood had an amazing game, considering he sat most of the second quarter really with 3 fouls, which was just, you know, goes to show how good of a player he is. But, you know, we got to look at Jalen Green. We got to see Kevin Porter Jr., Christian Wood. I think Tate played really well. We just got to see Eric Gordon.
Jae'Sean Tate is a very underrated player in this league. I will say that. And also, when you're talking about Christian Wood, you know, we got to see both why he is as good as he is, but you also got to see a lot of his inefficiencies tonight. Marvin Bagley killed him in the low post.
Yep.
Absolutely killed him. And Marvin Bagley is not a great low post player. He had a really, really good game, and I give him a lot of credit for that tonight. But we talk a lot about Christian Wood being the type, one of those players that the Kings should really be after. And tonight definitely made me think twice about that.
Yeah, awesome game by Marvin Bagley. Let's jump here into the box score, Cal, so we can go over some of these numbers because, as we always say, we're critical of players when they don't play well, and we praise them when they do play well. So yes, we need to give him some praise.
For sure. So as we mentioned at the top of the show, it was the Darren Fox and Marvin Bagley show tonight for a lot of this game. Fox ends with 27 points, 6 rebounds, 8 assists, did have 4 turnovers, but another very efficient game for him. I actually thought he was going to go over 40, probably midway through the third quarter of this game. Marvin Bagley, 26 points, season high, 13 rebounds, 2 blocks, 12 of 20 from the floor. He was great. Harrison Barnes again showed up. He didn't have quite the same impact that he did the other night against the Lakers, but he had another solid all-around game, 16 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists on only 9 field goal attempts. He was 4 of 4 at the line. Tyrese didn't quite nail Kingstradamus' prediction, but 9 points, 12 assists, 6 rebounds. Still a pretty solid game overall. And then the bench was big. Terrence Davis finally showed up again, 14 points on 5 of 8 shooting. Buddy Hield, 19 points, 4 of 10 from 3.
Yeah, I think Tyrese cooled down a little bit from that hot shooting streak, 1 of 6 from three-point range tonight. But I'm digging the turnover or the assist to turnover ratio. 12 assists tonight, only 1 turnover. I think that's huge, and that's, we talk about turnovers this whole season. Sacramento Kings turn the ball over too much, a lot of bad passes, stuff like that. So if you can get 12 assists and only turn the ball over once, that's great. And, when we watch Tyrese Haliburton, a lot of his turnovers are not even bad passes. It's him getting called for steps, him, having issues with his footwork. We didn't see a lot of that tonight. So overall, good game for Tyrese. I love what I saw out of Darren Fox. I think he was 7 of 10 from the field at halftime, and he continued
it. Great game.
Continued it into the second half, and then Marvin Bagley, great game for him. I love seeing him on the glass, and this is the first game where we've seen him actually get it going offensively, and they seem to be feeding him a little bit more. Oh
yeah, they could tell he was feeling it early on, and he was getting shots right around the rim, and he was converting on them. What you don't want to see is him take 5-6 threes a game, and he's stayed away from that since they've moved him to the center position.
Yeah, no threes for him tonight, but 12 of 20 from the field. Did a lot of work inside. Does this change your opinion on Marvin Bagley?
Well, I think my opinion on Marvin Bagley has been slowly changing over the course of the entire season, and I've kind of alluded to that. I've never necessarily said if there was a trade in place that I felt like would improve the Kings and it dealt Marvin Bagley away, that I would say no to that. But Marvin Bagley has definitely showed me over the past 2 to 3 months that on a team that gets some help here, some roster changes that improve the team, he can be a key factor on an improved basketball team. His rebounding has been fantastic. I think that he's slowly started to take better and better shots. It's debatable whether or not to play him at the 5 or the 4. He has played pretty well over these last 2 games starting at the 5. But again, you have to look at the teams that he played against, the Lakers, who start LeBron James at center, and the Rockets, who really don't have a true center either. So it's a very small window, a small sample size to go off of. But that being said, I've been really happy with what I've seen from Marvin Bagley all year long. The production hasn't always equaled what people think of when you have a number 2 pick or what they expect of him. Mm-hmm. But I think he's made a lot of changes to his game in the offseason, and I certainly wouldn't be disappointed if the Kings kept him at the trade deadline.
Yeah, I think he's, done a great job rebuilding his value. But at the same time, and we're going to talk about this in Around the Crown a little bit more when we talk about personnel and trades and all this stuff, but it's a little bit of an emotional thing, right? Where he seems to be playing better. Early on in the season, we're like, let's trade him for a bag of chips. Let's just get him out of here. Let's trade him for something that can help this team. Now that he's playing better, his trade value is higher. But now we're like, oh, we don't want to trade him now because he's playing better. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there.
It's not that I don't want to trade him. I just said that I wouldn't be disappointed if the Kings ended up hanging on to him.
Yeah.
They still have a decision to make in the offseason whether he's on the team or not, because his contract is going to be up here. They're going to have to decide how much money to pay him. Is somebody going to give him more money in the offseason? But he's played really, really well. I mean, tonight was his best overall game, obviously, of the entire season. And, JN here is right. It is one game. But his effort, his rebounding, those types of things are things that the Kings really, really need. We talk a lot about the Kings coming out flat again, and they're a bad rebounding team, and they don't match up well with small ball and all this stuff. He gives them an answer to all of those questions.
Yep.
So moving forward, I think you just have to wait and see how it goes. And like I said, if there's a trade offer in place like John Collins or, some power forward that I think is really legit, I would still pull the trigger on it.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, I like what I'm seeing out of Marvin Bagley.
Yeah, I agree. I really like what I'm seeing, and it kind of goes into that old, like, the grass is greener on the other side, right? Like, we've all been looking for Christian Wood and saying, wow, we'd love to have Christian Wood. He does exactly what this team needs. We have our Christian Wood in Marvin Bagley. He just needs to be more consistent, and he needs more playing time. And now that he's finally getting it, now that he is in that starting spot, he's performing really, really well. I want to get to team stats here in a second, but before we do that, I want to hear your thoughts on Harrison Barnes tonight. 16 points, 5 of 9 from the field, 2 of 5 from three-point range. And I think he did a little bit of everything.
Yeah, another very solid game overall from Harrison Barnes. Really underrated how good of a rebounder he is for a guy his size. To echo what I just said about rebounding, that's a big thing for the Kings. His three-point shooting has been, up and down, but overall, if you look over the course of the entire season, it's been really steady. He's been over 40% for the whole year. Another solid game tonight. If he continues to chip in with, anywhere from 14 to 20 points per game, when you have Fox that's scoring, over 25 a game recently, and you have these other guys that are picking it up here and there. Tyrese has had really good scoring games. That makes this Kings team so much more difficult to beat.
Yeah, I agree. Anything that jumped out on team stats for you?
I feel like this game, it was pretty even in a lot of categories. It was really won to me in 3-point shooting, even though there wasn't a huge margin or huge disparity between the two teams. 35% for the Kings to 30% for the Rockets. The rebounding was even. The points in the paint were even. Assists, though, the Kings were really sharing the ball tonight. A season-high 33 assists. The Rockets had 25. I feel like that, to me, combined with the outside shooting and the bench production was the difference in this game. The Kings had, I forget exactly how many points. It was another game where they had over 40 points off the bench, though, and the Rockets were in the 20s.
Yep. Yeah, another great game for the Sacramento Kings. They were able to play much better in the last 3 quarters than they were in the first quarter. That first quarter was pretty rough, and I was not in a good mood. We lost power here at the studio, so I was watching the first half on my cell phone, or the first quarter, and I finally was like, what am I doing? I can turn my phone on a hotspot. I watched the second quarter on my laptop, and then we got power at halftime, so I was able to watch the rest of the game, but I was not happy. And Brendan, I want to give you a shout out here. I'm going to talk about your trade offer that you sent me on, or you sent us on Instagram in the second section here. If you guys want to hit us up on Instagram, our Instagram is right down here. You can check out our website as well if you want to pick up some cool apparel. If you want to hit us up on Instagram, Twitter, stuff like that. We love to interact with the fans. We love to hear from you all. And we'll talk about that here in the next section. All right, so Metu, 13 minutes for him tonight, 7 points. What'd you like, what'd you dislike out of Metu?
I liked his readiness and willingness to shoot open shots. Again, 3 of 4 from the field, 1 of 2 from 3. He just really didn't get that many minutes tonight, and part of that was because Buddy Hield had a better game, so they really played Fox, Haliburton, Barnes, and Hield a lot in this game tonight, and they kind of had the opportunity against a Houston Rockets team that is not very big to play smaller lineup, so they didn't necessarily need Metu all that much in this game. But I thought he was really good in the short amount of time he was on the court.
Were you surprised Richaun Holmes didn't play? I mean, we saw him on the bench in the last game. They're talking about his conditioning and stuff like that, so I would assume maybe he's not up to where they want him to be to play in this game, but I was a little surprised that we didn't see him at all.
I wouldn't say that I was that surprised. I mean, the guy has missed a ton of games this season, so his conditioning, even if you didn't have an illness that tends to attack the respiratory system, you would still kind of be concerned about his stamina and his conditioning anyway. That being said, he's getting over one of those types of illnesses, so maybe they felt like it just wasn't the right time. And also this team, as I've continued to mention, is not a bigger team. Metu and Bagley starting together against the Lakers went really well for them. Bagley played really well again tonight in the center position, so I'm not surprised that Holmes didn't play today.
Okay. We had a Terrence Davis sighting, 18 minutes for him tonight, 14 points off the bench. We haven't seen this kind of production out of Terrence Davis in a while, and he'd been a pretty productive piece for Sacramento earlier in the season. What did you think about Terrence Davis's game tonight?
It was a good game. I mean, he finally was able to get some shots to fall. That's the thing for him. He's a very rhythm-type player, rhythm shooter, and for that type of player, when you take them out of the game, whether it's with an illness or an injury, and he had to go through both, so it was a longer road to get back, takes you more and more game reps to get more comfortable and back into your rhythm, and it was only a matter of time before he had one of these games. The question is, how many of them will he have going forward?
Yeah. R2D288 says, seems like you need to make the decision between Holmes and Bagley as main pick and roll man.
Yeah, I agree with that a little bit. I mean, I feel like you can play them together, and they would. The problem is when you play them together, they don't both get used in the pick and roll maybe as much as they should, or especially for Bagley, because when Holmes is out there, they use him in the pick and roll constantly. And Bagley tends to be stuck in the short corner shooting threes. I go back to what I said the other night when they played the Lakers, in that the style of play for the way the roster is composed currently is much better suited to having the floor spread with big men who can be outside but can also crash the boards, play the pick and roll. They leave the lane open for Fox. That doesn't happen as much when Richaun Holmes is in.
Yep. Jim, we're going to talk about the trade here in a few minutes when we get to the next section. We just want to talk about this game first, and then we'll move on. Looks like Kristen was a big fan of the shimmy in the game.
I mean, everybody's a big fan of the shimmy when your team wins and it goes in, right? Like, that's a great move.
At least they weren't shimmying in the first quarter, because I was still angry about that. RP says Bagley at center. I've been telling you guys this. Bagley should be the starting center for Sacramento, which is so tough because I love Richaun.
But also
I love what he's done.
Take that with a grain of salt, because, again, these last two teams that they've played when Bagley started at center, neither of them had a real center.
Yes.
So I understand, again, the style of play seems to work for Sacramento with having a guy of Bagley's skill set play the center position. But what is it going to be like when you play teams like Philadelphia or Denver or teams that have a really, really imposing big man inside? It's not going to be the same result.
And they still need a rim protector.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm going to keep Bagley at the center, I'm going to try and bring in a 4, maybe a Serge Ibaka, maybe a Miles Turner, somebody like that will be able to play the 4 and can be the rim protector. And maybe Bagley plays center on offense and power forward on defense. That way there's a guy that can bang inside.
And that would sum up what the Kings have tried to do all season long. They've tried to play matchups and adjust in-game depending on what substitutions are made. So, I get that. But I think there's a lot of truth in whatever the comment was earlier about making a decision between who plays the center position for this team going forward.
Yeah, I think you and I talked a lot about this Kings team early on in the season and how deep of a team they were. Obviously, injuries and health and safety protocols and all that has, really taken its toll on this Kings team. But, you look at the bench tonight, 14 from Terrence Davis, 19 from Buddy Hield. When you get that kind of production out of just two guys off the bench, it's always good for your team. Buddy Hield, I think, had a decent game tonight. I saw him get hit hard late in the fourth quarter, but 4 of 10 from 3-point range. He had a steal tonight. I thought he played pretty decent defense. He didn't make a ton of mistakes. What'd you see out of Buddy Hield?
Yeah, I liked what I saw out of Buddy Hield. I mean, it's the story with Buddy Hield is never going to change for me. He's going to have a handful of games in a row where he plays. He might not score 20 or more points, but at the end of the game, you'll look down and you'll say, that was a pretty good game from him. He came in, he hit some big threes. The Kings always are better when they're hitting from outside, just like pretty much every team in the league. But at some point, there's gonna be another game where he comes in and it's Buddy Chuckets, and it's 2 of 10 from 3, or it's 3 of 14 or something like that, and he doesn't really contribute to the team winning. In terms of the shot selection and types of basketball IQ plays that he makes, those have a big impact on whether or not we say Buddy Hield is at a good game. And we haven't really seen him make the ridiculous bad turnovers or, throw it up from half court as soon as the ball crosses the half court line. Those are the types of plays that you look at and you say, even if he's having a good game in terms of he's shooting really well from the outside, he can easily take himself out of that rhythm and out of that good game very, very quickly with those plays.
Yeah. What's up, Jeff? Good to see you there. Makami, Alex, I think you have a good point here in the chat. And I'm not writing off Rashawn Holmes. I'm just saying that Bagley, I think, is better fitted to play the center position in this new style NBA. It's not a shot at Rashawn Holmes at all. It's more of what Calvin and I have been talking about this whole season, fit with these guys. We have all these players, but they don't seem to fit together. Is Tyrese a 1? Is he a 2? Where is Bagley fit? Where does Rashawn fit? Where do all these guys fit? It seems like, Darren Fox is going to be the point guard. We know that. And we know Rashawn Holmes is going to play a wing, whether it's the 4 or the 3. But all these other guys, I'm not really sure exactly where they fit in on this team. Or if they're even playing the right position at this point, because the skill sets they don't seem to all fit together.
No, not quite.
And that's the only reason I suggest Bagley at the 5 is I just feel like that's the way that his style of play with Darren Fox, with all these guys around him, I think he's better suited to play the 5.
Yeah, and it comes down to you have to give your best player their best opportunity to succeed, right? So people look at Tyrese Haliburton and Rashawn Holmes and how they're really great in the pick and roll game together. You would think that they would be able to do the same type of thing with Darren Fox, but Darren Fox is not 9 times out of 10 or maybe 7 times out of 10. He's not looking to pass off the pick and roll. He's looking to score. So in terms of spreading the floor open and giving him the lane to where he doesn't even need an initial screen to get to the basket most of the time. That's what you get when you have somebody like Marvin Bagley playing at the 5.
Yeah, there's been so many times where I've seen, Darren Fox have a guy wide open cutting to the basket or rolling to the basket, and he just doesn't even look to pass the ball. And it would have been an easy layup or an easy, putback or something like that, but that's just not the style of play that he goes
and
with.
I don't think pretty sure I can speak for you when I say Darren Fox does look to pass the ball. I mean, he had 8 assists again tonight. He very rare. I mean, he's never going to lead the league in assists, I would say.
Yep.
but he does share the ball. He makes good basketball decisions in terms of whether or not to give up the ball in certain situations. So it's not like I see a lot of people in the chat, not tonight, but in other shows say, well, Darren Fox is a ball hog and he's a black hole and all this stuff. That's not really true. He is a score-first player, 100%, but he does look to facilitate and get other people the ball.
Yeah, it's just a different type of player. Some people are pass first, some people are score first. He's a score first point guard. That's just what he does. All right, Kyle. Let's jump here into your keys of the game. I know you mentioned Houston gives up the most points per game in the league at 116.4. The Kings are 28th in opponents scoring, so you said it was going to be a high-scoring game. And, Marvin Bagley did have a great game tonight. But when you're playing against a team like Houston, he should have a good game.
He should. A lot of the Kings players should have good games from an offensive standpoint. So key number one was who's going to take better care of the ball. Both of these teams turn it over a lot. The Kings won this one, even though it was slightly 17 turnovers for Houston, 14 for Sacramento. Number two was rebound the basketball. Houston is second to last in the NBA in rebounds per game. Again, it was very narrow, but the Kings did win this category, 53-50. And the last one was a big key, I think, to this game, which was bench production. The Kings clearly have an advantage over the Rockets in their bench, and tonight they got a lot of production from their bench, over 40 points again, which when the Kings do that, they're usually in the game, whether they win or lose. They have an opportunity to win the game.
Yeah, I want to welcome everybody in that's just joining us now. Welcome to Royal Rebounds, a Sacramento Kings YouTube channel for fans, by fans. It's Calvin over there. I'm Barry. We produce fresh Kings content almost daily, so make sure you guys hit that like button down below. If you are a Kings fan, consider subscribing to the channel. We really have a fun time here. We'd love to hear from you in the chat. We want everybody's opinion to be heard, and we want to work together to kind of, bring this Kings team up and respectable and back to the playoffs. We have a show every Friday, and we do post games after every single game, so we'd love to hear from you all. We break down the podcast into 3 different sections. The first part, we talk about the game. The second part, we talk about all things Sacramento Kings. We're going to be talking about trades, drafts, stuff like that tonight. And then the third section, we look ahead at the next week of Kings basketball and the next game, which is against the Houston Rockets. We love beer, we drink beer, and we talk about the Kings. So welcome. All right. So, we talked about Darren Fox and Tyrese Haliburton potentially not fitting before in the past, and it seems like we've only seen one game this year where they've both had just huge offensive outbursts, and it seems like they kind of take turns, right? Where one game Tyrese scores a lot and Darren Fox is kind of in the back seat, and then another game where Darren Fox scores a lot and Tyrese sits back. But the last 2 weeks of basketball or so since Fox has returned, it seems like Haliburton still gets the ball, but he's passing the ball. He's still getting these 10-assist games, and he's playing defense. I just want to hear your insights on how the fit is since Fox has returned, and if your opinion has changed from earlier on in the season.
I think the fit's been really good. To me, obviously we've talked a lot on this show about would the Kings be better long-term if they just went with one of the two and tried to build the team around either one. But I've said the whole time, I think that this team can succeed with keeping both of them. The question is going to be who else is on the team. I mean, if you have nights like tonight where someone like Marvin Bagley scores 26 points, Harrison Barnes adds 16, and then you get a combined, 23 points from Buddy Hield and Terrence Davis off the bench.
Oh, it was over 30 for them too. It was,
I think it was 19 and 14.
So 33.
Yeah, 33 points. So if you're going to get those types of contributions from other players, Tyrese doesn't have to score 20 points a game on this team, especially if he's going to be around double-digit assists every game. And if he's adding, somewhere from 9 to 13 points, I think that is a combination that works for this team. But the problem has been that outside of those two guys, they haven't consistently gotten the other production from the other players on this team.
Yep.
Any of those guys that I've mentioned, they haven't consistently performed the way that this team needs them to perform. So if you're looking at how the Kings go about restructuring this roster moving forward, a lot is going to depend on what types of deals they're going to get in return. And when you're talking about dealing for guys like Ben Simmons and the bigger name people in this league, it's probably going to require Darren Fox or Tyrese Haliburton to pull that trade off. So Monty McNair has a tough decision to make. It's, do I double down on these two guys and try to build a better supporting cast around them, which may not be easier to do than to pull the trigger on one of these big name deals that sends Tyrese or De'Aaron to Philadelphia for Ben Simmons.
Yeah, and, we're all happy when Marvin Bagley has a great game. We're all happy when Buddy Hield has a great game. But like Calvin said, they haven't been consistent, and that's the key. If you were to take this Kings team and you take, Fox, Haliburton, you have Harrison Barnes playing well, you have Bagley playing well, you put in a 2020 potential guy in Rashawn Holmes, and a 6-man playing well in Buddy Hield, this is a good Kings team, and they're going to win a lot of games. But the thing is they haven't been consistent with that. It's been one guy plays well, the other guys underachieve, and then, the next game, somebody underachieves and somebody else plays well. We saw the start of the season, the Kings started out really well, and Harrison Barnes was playing way above himself. He was shooting lights out, especially from three-point range. So I think you hit it right on the head here, where the key is consistency, and that's the difference between a good team and a bad team, and a good player and a great player. Is a great player can do that night in and night out and stay consistent. We all talk about potential, and we look at this Kings team and we say the potential for this team is so high. Darren Fox should be an all-star. Tyrese Haliburton's in his second year in the league. The last 2 months, he's leading the league in three-point percentage. He broke all these records, first Kings player to have double-digit assists in the last 10 years or something like that. Harrison Barnes is a good player. If Bagley can play up to this potential, if Rashawn can stop getting poked in the eye and, remain healthy and play his normal style of basketball, this is a good Kings team. It's just how often can they do that?
Yeah. Yeah, how often can they do that? And again, I think style of play is a major factor in whether or not this team is ultimately going to be a good team. The way that the team is constructed right now, I don't think up until the last couple of games, which again hasn't been against the greatest competition, I don't think they've really had a true style of play. It's always been changing. It feels like sometimes they're trying to play two different styles within the same game.
Yep.
And that has been a huge hindrance to this team all season long.
And it's a double-edged sword, right? Because we talk about, well, under Luke Walton, we knew what the style of play was, but then we'd also be critical of him and say he didn't make any adjustments at halftime. Right, the Kings, they played their ass off in the first half, and then he didn't make adjustments, and that's why they lost the game. Versus now, maybe they do make adjustments, but we can't identify the style of play that they even do, and that's got to be harder on the players. We want them to make adjustments mid-game. We want them to make adjustments mid-quarter, stuff like that. But you still have to be clear with your style of play and what your expectations are for each one of these guys.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I will say I believe Alvin Gentry has done a good job of, and that's making adjustments within each individual game. It hasn't always worked out for him, but I think that he's very aware of that. And a good example of that was just the other night against the Lakers. He started with Metu and Bagley at the 4 and 5, and the Kings got off to a very good start, but then he subs in Alex Len before Dwight Howard comes in the game. Mm-hmm. That's when the Lakers go on a really big run because Alex Len was not a good matchup for the Kings in that game. Second half, we didn't see Alex Len for a lot of that second half. They stuck to what worked for them, and I think that's a direct result of Alvin Gentry seeing what's going on in the game and making a good halftime adjustment.
Yeah, I agree. And, games like this, we're all happy they got a win. But, I'm going to go back to that first quarter again. I did not like it at all. 40 points for Houston. They shot 61% from the field. Luckily, Christian Wood was in foul trouble and missed most of the second quarter. But if he hadn't picked up that third foul and he had been in the game, it could have been a whole different game.
Yeah, it definitely could have been a whole different game.
And Darren Fox played the entire first quarter, so he sat out like most of the second quarter where the Kings were able to go on a run and get back in this game. And then, yes, he was able to do stuff in the second half and had a great game. But the Kings made a huge run when Darren Fox was on the bench in this game.
Well, and that goes back to one of my keys to the game was that the Kings bench had an advantage in this game. So you have to trust or you have to go to what you think your strengths are, and the Kings bench isn't always a strength because Buddy Hield doesn't always come out and score 20 points and shoot efficiently from the floor. Davion Mitchell had another really tough game on offense. I think he was 2 of 11 from the floor. Yep, 2 of 11, 0 of 4 from 3. But Terrence Davis was there. He was able to step up. So you have to at least trust that when you think that you have an advantage in the game, you have to keep with that. I mean, Darren Fox can't play 48 minutes a game.
Exactly.
That won't happen.
Exactly.
So.
He wants to, but he can't. Shout out Sean, Jay, Jim, Fred, Jeremiah. I see you guys all here in the chat. Mike, Bass. Thank you guys for joining us. Happy to have you guys here. I think Fred had a good point here. He said they need consistency in defense to win and prove to us that they can be a team for the future. I think that's 100%. That's the key is defense and consistency. We also got to give a shout out to Tanvir. I see you, buddy. We haven't seen you in a little while. It's good to see you back here. Holla, says Jeremiah. Yeah, guys. I hope you guys are having fun. We're not winning a lot of games this season, so we got to enjoy these W's while we can, even if it is the Houston Rockets. But hey, we're playing them again, and then we got the Pistons, so we could go on a 3-game winning streak here. We could, Cal.
Yeah.
We could.
Could definitely. 4 games, actually.
Anything else you want to talk about before we move on here to the next section?
No, I mean, this is, I think everybody needs to, keep this all in perspective. It's great to see another win. It's good to see 2 wins in a row, but these are games that the Kings should win.
Yeah.
I mean, the Lakers game, maybe that could have gone either way, but this game, the next game against the Rockets, the Pistons, those are games that, even though the Kings haven't been a great team all season long, we all agree that they're better than those 2 teams. So it's going to be a much more simple answer here when we do these shows at the end of the games. If the Kings win those games, as opposed to if they lose, we're all going to be saying, everyone's comments in this chat are going to be trade everyone, because that's what it is when the Kings lose.
We even have a guy whose username is trade everybody.
Yeah.
Sean, I see you here. He says, keep Fox and Hallie and bring in better players to surround them. That's a good plan and all, but how are you going to do that? That's my whole question. If you're getting the 8th, 9th, 10th pick every year, that's a very slow way to add to this team. And if no free agents want to come to Sacramento, I'm not sure how you're going to do that. I really don't. All right, RP says Bagley needs to play center for the next few games. Let Holmes come off the bench until he feels conditioned. I don't disagree with that. I don't know if it's going to take
disagree with that either.
A few games, but I don't disagree with that at all. I don't. Alex says, agreed. Don't want to get too happy yet. Let's get this 4-game winning streak, and let's get the Raiders W tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll start there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Raiders need to win. We need the Rams to win on Monday. It's
a lot of people want the Niners to win as well, but
yeah, it's Jay says trade for Miles Turner.
Okay.
All right,
my team's not in the playoffs, so it doesn't even matter to me. Anybody can win. I don't care.
I think that